go away. It's a part of my life. As much as I try to forget it, it took me a long time to heal. For 30 years, I never spoke about it. And now I think it's time. There's so much to still tell and a lot of truths to come out that have never been spoken. There was a lot of people that didn't even know that. I had a brother, and they didn't even know that he was John Wayne Gacy.
Investigators have started to dismantle Gacy's house and garage as they continue to search for other bodies in this quiet suburban neighborhood.
How can you do that? How can any human being do that? A lot of people say, how could you still have loved him? It's because I didn't know. There was evil there that was hidden in a side that he never showed. I would have never expected the boy in this picture to have done what he did 15 years later. I would have never expected it. You know, John and I had a unique childhood. Mom always had John watch out for me, being the youngest, so he always had to take me everywhere. I was like his sidekick. I was like the tag-along sister. I called him my protector because he was always there, kind of watching over me. As we got older as teenagers, we bonded and we were friends as well as brother and sister. But I've never seen the killer part of him that did what he did. All I remember is how he was growing up. Why did he set his mind into killing? John wasn't like the other boys in the neighborhood. They were into football in the winter and baseball and all the different sports types things. He liked to plant flowers. He liked to sing. I don't know very many of the boys in the neighborhood that would get in the kitchen and make grilled cheese sandwiches and try to bake cookies. It kind of made my dad upset because he wanted him to be a manly man, and he thought my brother was not a manly man. Dad would come home from work.
Good Lord. What are you doing, boy?
I had to bake us a pie.
If John was baking or cooking or planting marigolds, then the razor strap came out.
Come here, boy.
Come on, he is just trying to
Don't
please you.
stick up for him. I said come here.
It was scary because if he was drunk, we never knew how hard that beating was going to be.
What?
But John didn't go to defend himself at all. It's like he was like a punching bag. He didn't fight back. He didn't try to fight off the spanking. He just took it.
Next time, you ought to go outside and play some football.
He always went up to his room and closed the door. What he was doing, I have no idea, but he wouldn't talk to anybody afterwards. This is a picture of a fishing trip that John went on with my dad. And I see the look on John's face, the scowl. I saw that look a lot at the table in the kitchen. When he was getting yelled at, he would just make that face and just kind of look down. John would pay me to clean his room because he didn't like changing sheets and stuff. So I would clean his room, dust and whatever, and then he'd give me like a little allowance for doing it. And I went in there to do that, and I noticed kind of a silky colored material in his bed, and when I pulled the sheets back, it ended up being underpants. Ladies' silk underwear. It was just kind of mystified me that he had pants in his bedroom that were women's.
Mom,
What is it, honey?
I found these.
When your brother was young, she said he used to like silk panties, and he used to take the silk panties and rub them with his fingers. He just liked the feel of the silk. And I said, that's just a strange thing. Why would he take them and hide underwear?
You've got to promise me, really promise me, okay, that you're not going to talk to your father about this.
I promise.
She said, keep it to yourself. She said, I'll handle it.
I will get rid of these.
John and my mom had a very, very close relationship. She went to talk to him about it. I did not know what she said to him, but John wasn't real happy with me that I went to Mom with it. He said I should have come to him with it. He was very upset with me. In the weeks to follow, when I changed bedding, there was no more pants to be found. So whatever it was ended. John and Dad had an argument, and one day John didn't come home. He'd gone off to work and he never showed back. And it was real shocking that after 3 days they couldn't find him.
Why are you so worked up about Marion?
You could have a little empathy here. You know, he's your son too.
I was scared because that's not like John. John was usually pretty much like clockwork. As days went on, I became more concerned because I wondered if he was dead. He was actually ended up gone for almost 3 months, and they found him in Las Vegas, working in a mortuary. I believe that he stayed another couple of months before he came back home. It was a different John. It was totally a different John. He wasn't the brother I grew up with.
Well, I couldn't stomach that myself. You didn't have a hard time with it at all?
No, it was just a job.
We asked him about the mortuary work, and he started telling Mom and I what he did, and it just kind of creeped me out. He was telling us stories about, the dead bodies and whatever, and it was like, whoa.
But surely you didn't have to touch the bodies and all, did you?
We're all gonna die someday.
He did the cleanup of the room that they worked in. To think of John out there in Vegas cleaning up and seeing all these dead people and it not fazing him at all was really a bizarre thing, but he said it never bothered him at all.
Anyway, we're really happy you're home, John.
When he came back from Vegas, it's like he wanted a different life, and he didn't share as many things with me as he had before. Before, we went a lot of places together. He no longer invited me to go eat, have a pizza. We just kind of parted until we both got married. We were friends, but it was different. It was just totally different. It wasn't the same relationship.
Hey, what's wrong with you?
What's wrong with me?
Can you just calm down?
And it wasn't like he was just angry and yelling. He was trying to hit him. He was like acting like a crazy man. Over the years, it seemed like the older he started getting, I think whatever was transpiring when he was younger, I think was transforming as he got older. You take these and you look at that and you see how sad his face is. The face told it all the time with him. My uncle needed to move, and so I got my husband-to-be and my brother to help get the heavy stuff moved.
So after the wedding, you're just gonna what? Have kids, get old, wait for your days to run out?
John was kind of kidding us about getting married, and Ron made a crack about my mom.
Come on, you think Karen will let that happen?
Yeah, well, she's no pushover like your mother, John.
John took offense to it, and he blew up.
What'd you just say about my mom?
I just said that.
No, I heard what you said.
John said something about, don't say that about my mother.
Come on, John, he was kidding.
I don't care what he was trying to do. He doesn't get to talk about mom that way.
Okay, take it easy.
You want me to take it easy?
John!
And a fight ensued.
Hey, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with me?
John, can you just calm down?
Say one word about my mother and I'll slap you.
He was swearing. He was like acting like a crazy man. It wasn't like he was just angry and yelling. He was trying to hit him.
What's wrong with me?
That wasn't John. John didn't hit people. He started pounding on the car and beating on the roof and on the window of the car. I don't know what's wrong with you. I said, I don't know why you're acting this way. It's just, it was crazy. And Ron slowly moved away because I told Ron, just move. He's away from the car. Move. Just get out of here. For a couple of days, we didn't even speak. He goes to work at Nunbush Shoes. And he's there for a couple of years, and then he meets Marlon. Marlon is his first wife. Him and Marlon had a little boy. And about 2 years later, I think they had a little girl. And they moved into Iowa. John, you could tell that he was settled. He was happy. I believe he really loved her. And he was proud to be a father. He was loving. It was just a new chapter for John. He was just a different person. I get a phone call from my mom one day, and she tells me that my brother's been arrested in Iowa, and he's in jail. And accused of sodomy of 2 boys. The judge said because of the age of the victims, he was going to send out a message that wasn't going to be tolerated. And he sentenced him, I believe, to 10 years in prison. We didn't get to talk to him until after the trial was over.
Look, I know this looks bad. Okay, I was only doing my duties as a member.
What do you mean, duties?
Well,
He told the whole family it was a political thing. John joined the JC chapter. I believe it's the Junior Chamber of Commerce. And he was explaining to us that the job was to bring men into the JCs He was the recruitment person. And one of the things they did was they'd have these parties with booze and pornographic movies.
So what about the other members? Why won't they speak up?
It's politics. And these guys just don't want to go down with me.
He never admitted and owned up to the sodomy.
But what about these charges, John?
He had showed the boys the movie, but all the other stuff didn't happen.
Mom, I can't believe you're buying any of this garbage.
He said, I'm not a homosexual. He was very convincing. When he talked about something, he could convince you. There's just something about him that he was very believable.
Don't worry, John. We're gonna do everything in our power to get you out. Okay, son?
There were strings pulled. It was John reinventing himself again. He was a leader, and I'm really believing that that's why they paroled him so early.
This one is Pogo. This is my uncle in full clown dress. You know, it used to be a good memory. Now it makes me wonder, what's he hiding behind the makeup? The first time that I actually did get to see my uncle in his clown costume, it was for the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Chicago.
Hiya, kids! My name's Pogo, the silly dancing clown.
He was at a function afterwards. He was all in full attire, clown makeup, everything like that. And he was smiling, and he made a good clown. He seemed happy, and he was waving at people, still giving candy.
Do you kids want a balloon?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just... Uh-oh.
It was the first time we'd seen him in his makeup, and you couldn't even recognize him. I never really put a lot of thought as it being like an evil thing. It was just something that made him happy.
Smile for the camera, Pogo.
Now it's like, what were you trying to hide? He was like trying to be a normal part of society, but really had another life going on.
I will never understand why people focus on a clown as being a bad thing. I do know there's people that are afraid of clowns for some reason. And I guess knowing that he had been convicted of sodomy, they tried to look at him as dressing up maybe to fool children. I saw him with my own children, with his children, my sister's children. I never saw him do anything sinister. Everybody wants to put something cynical about it. And I saw nothing cynical. John really did love kids. The first time I saw the house that John and Mom moved into, my first reaction was the smell. There was a smell as you walked in the house and through the house. Just had this old, musty smell.
What is that awful smell?
I'm not sure. I don't even know what you're talking about.
It's making me nauseous. How can you stand it?
The house wasn't built on a slab. It was dirt underneath it, and if you don't cover that, it smells. My mom didn't have any clue that it had a smell.
John, have you tried to figure out where the stench is coming from?
Oh, that. Yeah, I looked into that.
When I asked him about the smell, he said it was coming from the earth underneath. There was a crawl space under the house. Very small opening to get down. There was a ladder that went down. Wasn't very deep. That was just where the odor was coming from.
I learned the first time it rained that this ground gets wet under there, and then the crawl space it puts out a musty odor. There was always a musty odor in that house.
And this just clicked when I heard his statement. I remember him saying in Cook County Jail, I should have cemented the crawl space. I don't know why I didn't cement the crawl space. And I looked at him and I said, what would that have solved? And he didn't answer me. He started a painting and decorating business. Later, it went into construction, and he started hiring young men to work for him. I noticed the difference in him. He's glassy-eyed. He popped pills. He was shorter in temper.
This isn't healthy, John. You're killing yourself.
He was complaining about the long hours, and if you want it done right, you've got to do it yourself.
You aren't helping yourself by hiring these boys.
They're not boys. They are young men.
I said, why don't you hire adults? Why are you hiring kids? I said, they're not dependable. Why do you hire kids? He said, because they work for cheaper labor. I said, you really need to hire older people. And he said, I'll run my business the way I want to run my business.
Well, I'm sure there are other ways.
Well, why don't you just mind your own business, Karen? Huh?
And then there was a couple of strange incidents that had happened. There was a couple of boys that ended up gone missing. And they were two people that actually worked for him. Sometimes he's out till 2, 3 in the morning. You wonder, what was he doing till 3 o'clock in the morning? Well, John had got a new car, but on the driver's side, there was one of these hand lights that I know that I've seen on police cars. And I said, what's that for? And he said, well, I have to use it sometimes when I'm out in the neighborhood, just trying up on the house to see the addresses. I thought that was odd because most time people go to work during the daytime. I learned later that he was using it to pretend that he was a police officer, that supposedly he even had a badge to kind of lure a prospect to his car. I didn't at the time tie this together at all. It didn't make sense to me, but you know, John sometimes didn't make sense with some of the things he did, so I just, you know, I just blew it off. Time was running short. I get the phone call, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I know when the phone rings at that time, it cannot be good news.
John?
He said there are some police at my door. They want to talk to me.
That was Christmas, and I want to say that was at my Uncle John's house, and that was definitely a happy memory. Memories like this, those are the memories I choose to hang on to. before I knew what he turned into.
The weekend of Thanksgiving when John was there was a sense of urgency in everything he was doing. He wasn't agitated, but it was like he had a sense of time was running short.
John, you really didn't have to do this.
I know. I really wanted to. I love you guys.
He wanted to buy things for me, wanted to buy things for the kids when he was kind of insistent. And so we had a great time shopping, but you could tell there was something on his mind. He was charging everything, he wasn't paying cash. I didn't know what was going on with him.
You sure everything's okay?
Karen, everything is fine.
You sure?
I tried to get him just, how's things going, the business going well, stuff like that. But he didn't open up to anything at all.
Here, I gotta take off anyway. We'll talk soon, yeah?
And when he got ready to leave, he really squeezed and hugged me.
I love you guys. Don't you ever forget that, okay?
Usually John would just give me a kiss and leave, but this time he gave me a hug and he kind of held on a little bit longer, not just a peck and out the door, I didn't understand where this was coming from. I was just concerned that something wasn't right. Now I know why he did it. I think that he knew that someone was catching on. In December 1978, John called, and when he was talking to us on the phone, there was somebody at the door. And he said, there are some police at my door. They want to talk to me. There was a kid at the drugstore that went missing one day when I had been in the drugstore, so they're questioning everybody that was in the drugstore that day.
That's awful. Did you happen to see him or something?
I said, is there something going on, something we need to talk about or anything? And he said, no, don't worry about it.
I just want to make sure you're okay.
He was trying to blow it off, but at the same time, when John did something wrong or something wasn't right, I could tell in the tone of his voice.
Just let me know if you need anything.
That really worried me. That was the first time I think I got very, very concerned. A couple of days later, I get the phone call, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I know when the phone rings at that time, it cannot be good news. And it was a strange voice on the phone, one I didn't recognize, and he said, I'm your brother's lawyer. John has been arrested.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
Suspicion of murder. I was silent at first. I said, can I talk with John? And he said, let me see if they'll let you talk to him. So he did get the phone.
John, what are they talking about?
I said, did you kill somebody? And he said, yes. I've probably seen this picture a couple of times in the newspaper when they first booked him, and I can tell you that I hated this picture. And do you know why? Not because he's arrested on here and he's being booked in, because he's smiling. How can somebody have just been arrested for the murder of some missing boy. You can see he's laughing. How could you, as a human being, look at that and not hate him? I don't want to look at it. I don't have one of these anymore because I did correct the one I had. So. Oh, that's upsetting. Oh, I just might need a second. Each day it got worse and worse and worse. And we started dreading even turning on the news. And then they're talking about there could be more. Mom, I didn't want to live anymore. So I took a bottle of pills and took them all.
This morning, police searched Gacy's home and found the decomposed remains of 3 bodies, dirt crawl space under the house. They suspect there are several more bodies buried here.
It's creepy that we might have been in that house and there had been bodies buried under it. My first reaction was, did Mom and him buy a house that somebody buried bodies under? That was my very first reaction. Each day it got worse and worse and worse because they weren't finished with their investigation.
Police today found 6 more bodies under the John Gacy house. The 6 bodies bring the total found under this house and garage to 15, all appearing to have been teenage boys and young men.
That's when our life changed. All the lives that he took, all the families he took their siblings or their sons away. We saw one side of him, and it wasn't that side of him.
Police have found, at last count, 27 bodies buried under his house and garage, and 2 more at a nearby river.
How can somebody do so well, grew up with, we were born from the same mother, had the same father, and then do all of what he did? I asked that myself that so many times, and there's not an answer. There's not an answer.
When they paint the image that I was this monster who picked up like these altar boys along the street and swatted them like flies, I said, this is ludicrous.
I said, what do you mean you didn't do all this? How did all those bodies get under the house if you didn't do it? He said, I can show you who I knew. And he started pointing with his finger. These are the pictures that he was pointing to, and he literally pointed to faces in the newspaper saying, I didn't know this person, I didn't know that person, so how could I have killed them?
I have no knowledge of the crime whatsoever. Never have had. Go ahead and kill me, but you will have executed somebody that didn't commit the crime.
How could he act so innocent, like he didn't do anything? Is that a mental problem? He's too sane for it to be a mental problem. How can you be insane 33 times? There was nothing insane about him. It was like a nightmare, just a total nightmare. We started getting phone calls, people threatening to harm our children, like in retaliation for what John had done. We couldn't let our kids go to school. We couldn't even go to work. We just couldn't face people day after day. And it's like, it's never ending. I kept thinking about the families, the family members of these boys. I can't explain the desperation, the hurt, the shame. You feel that you just can't go any further. It's sort of like going on a hill and you just know you just need to drop off. I didn't want to live anymore. So I took a bottle of pills and took them all.
It was a little after midnight, and I happened to get up because my son, he needed a bottle, and I went out to the kitchen.
Mom, what's wrong? Mom?
And my mother was leaning over the sink, and she had taken a bottle of pills.
Mom, what'd you do?
I was yelling at her. I was like, how many of these did you take? And she couldn't answer me. And she just kept saying, I just want to die. Just let me die. The only thing I knew to do was to call my dad. He took her to the emergency room, and they pumped her stomach.
It's not a time in my life that I am very proud of because I feel like I failed my children. If I had ended my life, what would have happened to them? I just couldn't take anymore. A lot of people ask me about the death sentence and what I feel about it. And when it came to John and his sentence, I think it more than fit the crime. It was like it wasn't even a shock to me. It was like, okay, yeah, I knew that. I wasn't even upset over it. We spent about an hour or so visiting John. He really didn't talk too much about the execution. He talked about it, what his last meal was going to be, what he was going to eat. This picture is of John and I. And you can see how he takes his handcuffs and kind of goes around me. And while it wasn't a happy time, we both were smiling. And I think it was out of love for one another. It's like you're not thinking about the crime. You're just thinking about he's going to die. And I was just trying to make his last hours more meaningful for him. Still trying to be the dutiful sister. It was killing me. I just said, I love you. Know that. And I did love him. I hated what he did. But I loved him as a brother. But I didn't love him as a brother that killed. I loved him as the brother that protected me all the way through my life until he did what he did. And that was it. I never talked to him or saw him again.
It's time for you to die!
When we walked from the death house, they were setting up some tents and stuff in almost the front yard of the prison. That was really horrible because they were shouting out the windows at you. I think that was probably worse than being there with John saying goodbye.
At 12:58 a.m. His last words were in essence that taking his life would not compensate for the loss of the others, and he basically said that he saw this as the state murdering him, and he didn't think that would serve justice.
I'd never heard that. I don't remember hearing that at all. It makes me feel angry that he made that kind of statement. I mean, that blows me away. What about serving the families that he crushed? I don't know why he didn't say something about the families. I thought that's what he had said. It makes me ashamed of him, really. Not that, how much more shameful can I get? I thought he made his peace with God, and it makes me know that he didn't make his peace with God, because he wouldn't have said something like that. When I see this picture of John and my dad and his little son, I wish I could turn the clock back to that time. I could almost cry when I look at this picture. John looked content. He looked like a family man, but John was a master manipulator. There's no doubt in my mind about that. He acted just as normal as anyone sitting in this room, which is scary because it shows you never know anybody. You think you do, but you really don't.
It starts with a night that should have disappeared into the silence of an ordinary autumn. A night no different from any other in the quiet outskirts of Bordeaux, until a single scream cut through the damp air like a razor tearing a curtain. One sound sharp enough to slice through routine, brief enough to be doubted yet unforgettable for the one neighbor who heard it and still hears it echoing more than 2 decades later. A scream without a face, without a direction, just a violent crack in the darkness and then nothing. No footsteps, no struggle, no collapse. Only the kind of void that swallows truth whole and leaves a community wondering if they imagined the horror or witnessed the beginning of a tragedy disguised as a whisper. It was the kind of night where fog clung to the ground and streetlights buzzed weakly, as if they too were afraid of what might be lurking just beyond their reach. Hours later, the city woke as it always did, unaware that a story was already unfolding beneath the surface, a story that would stretch across decades and become a headline. No one expected to read Bordeaux 2001 cold case solved, surprise arrest shocks neighborhood, but back then, in those first hours, no one knew. They were living inside the prologue of a mystery that would haunt detectives, unravel families, and slip through every investigative net cast to capture it. They only knew that a young woman named Elise Moreau, 24 years old, bright-eyed with a laugh that rose quickly and faded slowly, failed to show up for her shift at the bakery on Rue des Fauvettes. At first, it was shrugged off as forgetfulness, a mix-up, a missed alarm. But the second day, when her phone rang and rang without answer, when the bakery owner called her mother, when her friends realized she hadn't posted a single message or returned a single text, the quiet concern hardened into something colder, something heavier, something closer to dread. Police arrived at her apartment building with clipped voices and notebooks that would soon overflow with theories, contradictions, and desperate scribbles. The door wasn't forced. Nothing was broken. Her keys were missing, her coat was gone, but her wallet lay untouched on the counter, and her bed was made with a precision that did not match her usual morning rush. There was no sign of panic, no sign of a struggle, but something felt off, a strange emptiness, a wrongness that couldn't be named. The officers walked through the space, slowly sensing it, but unable to point at it. It was like the air itself was holding back a secret, refusing to let them breathe too deeply. Then came the detail that would turn Elise's disappearance from a missing persons report into a cold case that would chill the city for 20 years. Her phone found later that afternoon, lying face down in a ditch 2 kilometers away. No fingerprints, no scratches, no clues, just a silent object abandoned with surgical precision as if placed there rather than dropped. It felt intentional, almost mocking, as if the person who took her wanted investigators to know they were dealing with someone careful, someone methodical, someone who did not rush. Teams canvassed the area. Volunteers searched the woods. Posters spread across bus stops and bakeries and lampposts. Elise's face looking out with a half smile that grew more painful to see as the days turned into weeks and the hope thinned like light at the bottom of a well. Rumors erupted sightings. Theories, shadowy figures seen near the river, whispers of a car speeding away that night. The scream returned in retellings, gaining shape and drama, evolving with each retelling until it became a ghost haunting every conversation, a piece of oral folklore that would follow Bordeaux like a stray shadow. But the facts remained few, fragile and frustratingly inconsistent. The investigation stalled, leads evaporated. Witnesses contradicted themselves, the case file thickened, but the truth thinned. And Elise, who once filled rooms with brightness, became a missing silhouette, a face on a fading poster. Her mother visited the police station every week, then every month, then whenever she could gather enough strength to walk through those doors. Each time she asked the same question, "Have you found anything?" And each time the detectives offered the same answer, spoken softer and softer as the years passed. Not yet. By the end of 2001, the case slipped from active investigation to a place no detective likes to admit exists, the drawer reserved for mysteries too stubborn to reveal themselves. The term cold case slowly attached itself, first whispered, then spoken, then printed in internal reports. It lingered like a stain on the precinct, a reminder of failure of a life swallowed whole by the unknown. And yet the city did not forget. Bordeaux carried the story like an unfinished sentence, something that hovered between memory and myth. Children who grew up in the neighborhood learned the tale as a warning. Teenagers dared each other to walk the street where Elise was last seen, and adults shivered whenever the date of her disappearance resurfaced. Time continued its march, merciless and indifferent. New crimes replaced old ones. Faces changed, streets changed. But the aura of Elise's case lingered heavy, yet silent. A cold case that no one could warm a wound covered but never healed. Until the day the headline hit like a lightning bolt, tearing open a long blackened sky. 2 decades later, in 2021, a man living quietly in the same neighborhood, a man who had passed every background check for his job, who waved politely to his neighbors, who walked his dog every morning at 6, was arrested without warning. The street erupted with confusion, shock, disbelief. It felt like the ground shifted beneath their feet, as if reality itself had been hiding a double life. What made it worse, what made it chilling, was how calmly he allowed himself to be taken. No resistance, no panic, no questions. Just a slow exhale, a resignation, like someone who always knew this day would come and had simply been waiting for it to arrive. The news spread like wildfire, tearing through group chats, cafes, workplaces, radio stations. People stepped out of their houses just to talk to each other, to ask the same question over and over. Why him? What did he do? What did they find? And behind every question, behind every whisper, behind every gasp, lay another truth the community had never truly let go of Elise. Her story had been waiting like a dormant flame, and the arrest poured gasoline on everything. Detectives offered no details at first. Only the headline leaked through Bordeaux. A Ironworker 2001 cold case solved surprise arrest shocks neighborhood. And yet the word solved felt premature, almost fragile. People wanted answers, wanted explanations, wanted closure. But instead, they got a wall of silence, and behind that silence lay a labyrinth of revelations, built from DNA, forgotten evidence, and a single overlooked detail that would change everything. But part 1 ends in the moment before those revelations break open, in the electric breath held between the arrest and the truth, in the shock that rippled through Bordeaux like a delayed earthquake, leaving everyone wondering how a man who blended into the rhythms of daily life could carry a secret capable of freezing an entire city in time. The moment the handcuffs clicked shut, the world seemed to tilt just a fraction, just enough for reality to feel misaligned. The officers kept their voices low, their faces unreadable, but the tension wrapped around the scene like invisible barbed wire. The man at the center of the storm, Adrien Leclerc, 46 years old, a maintenance technician at a nearby high school, stood motionless. His shoulders relaxed, his eyes steady, as if he were watching someone else being arrested. He blinked once, slowly, and looked toward the end of the street, where the fog was lifting like a curtain in an old theater. For a heartbeat, he seemed almost serene. And that, more than anything, frightened the onlookers. Neighbors peered from behind curtains, stepped out onto balconies, whispered to each other with quick jerks of the head. No one had ever complained about Adrien. He paid his rent on time. He kept to himself. He fixed things when asked. He said hello, nodded politely, smiled faintly at children. There was nothing about him that suggested danger, nothing that hinted at a cold case buried 20 years deep. And yet the police treated him like a man they had been hunting for a very long time. A single photo captured the moment Adrien standing between two officers, head slightly tilted, eyes unfocused. When the image hit social media, it exploded. Comments spiraled. Theories multiplied like smoke. And, beneath it all, a chilling question burrowed into the minds of everyone who saw it. How could someone so ordinary hide something so monstrous for so long? Inside the police car, as the doors shut and the engine revved, Adrien finally broke his silence. A single sentence spoken in a voice flat enough to be mistaken for exhaustion. "You should have found me earlier." The officers glanced at each other, unsure whether he was confessing or mocking them. But the words lingered in the air like a toxic fog feeding the firestorm brewing outside. At the station, detectives gathered around monitors reviewing files they thought they would never reopen. Elise Moreau's missing persons report, the photo of her smile, soft, almost shy eyes filled with the kind of brightness that makes people root for you even if they never met you. Handwritten notes from witnesses long moved away, long forgotten. Maps of the routes she might have taken. Lists of suspects who had been cleared or questioned or lost to time. All of it, dust-covered memory sparked back to life by a sudden surge of urgency. And then came the detail everyone wanted, but no one yet had the reason for the arrest. The single thread that had finally pulled this labyrinth apart. It started with a renovation. 2 months earlier, workers renovating an old storage building behind the high school discovered a buried metal locker under layers of concrete and soil. It was old, rust-eaten, sealed shut with a padlock that had fused into a lump of iron. At first, they thought it was some sort of abandoned equipment, but when the foreman swung a hammer and the lock gave way, the smell hit them. First a faint mustiness, not death, but age, the kind of odor that suggested something had been hidden for a very long time. Inside the locker, wrapped in a deteriorating towel, lay a small collection of objects, a set of keys still attached to a faded sunflower keychain, a cracked flip phone with the battery missing a strand of auburn hair stuck to the fabric like a trapped memory. Alongside them was a single earring, silver, shaped like a leaf. An earring Elise's mother recognized without hesitation. An earring Elise had worn the day she vanished. The discovery triggered a ripple that grew into a wave. Forensics ran tests, DNA analysis confirmed what everyone feared and expected: the hair belonged to Elise. And the fingerprint on the inside of the locker lid, one print partial but clear, matched the man who had maintained the school for 20 years. The man who had keys to every building. The man who knew every hidden corner. Adrien Leclerc. Detectives moved fast. They reviewed his work history, his files, his old addresses. They found an old complaint from 2002 filed by a colleague who claimed Adrien made her uncomfortable. It had been dismissed as a misunderstanding. They found a citation for trespassing in 1999 that was never followed up. They found receipts, notebooks, scraps of paper that meant nothing individually, but formed a mosaic of someone who had lived carefully, quietly, and with deliberate caution. But the most disturbing detail emerged when detectives searched Adrien's apartment. Inside his bedroom closet, tucked behind a stack of worn jackets, lay a wooden box filled with photographs, trees, rivers, sidewalks, windows, ordinary things. except every image was taken from the perspective of someone watching. A woman walking her dog, a man locking his shop, a child waiting for the bus. And at the bottom of the stack were 3 photographs of Elise taken from a distance, blurry but unmistakable. Elise leaving her apartment, Elise at the bus stop, Elise carrying a bag of groceries, all dated within the last month before she disappeared. The photographs were enough to obtain a full warrant, but they still didn't explain what happened to her. They didn't reveal where she had gone, or why Adrian had chosen her, or how he had managed to erase every trace of her for 20 years. They only confirmed what the city already feared. Elise's disappearance was no accident, no random tragedy. It was orchestrated. Neighbors described Adrian to the media quiet, harmless, reserved. Some defended him, insisting he was a good man, while others stepped forward with new stories, fragments of unease that now felt like missed warnings. One older resident recalled seeing Adrian walking alone late at night near the place where Elise's phone was found. Another remembered him watching from his window as the search teams combed the woods in 2001. The details felt suspicious in hindsight, but at the time they were nothing. In the interrogation room, Adrian sat with his back straight, hands folded neatly, eyes fixed on the table. Detectives asked questions, but he gave them nothing. No denial, no confession, only silence thick enough to suffocate the room. He seemed determined to keep the truth buried, even as evidence stacked against him like stones forming a tomb. Outside, journalists swarmed the police station. Headlines exploded across news sites: cold case breakthrough, shocking arrest in 20-year mystery, Elise Moreau investigation reopened after new evidence. Residents gathered in clusters, talking in hushed tones, glancing toward the station doors as if the truth might walk out at any moment. The air buzzed with a cocktail of fear and fascination, the kind that only unsolved mysteries awaken. For Elise's mother, the arrest reopened a wound she had learned to carry without letting it destroy her. She arrived at the station wearing the same necklace she had worn every meeting with the detectives, a small silver pendant shaped like a heart. When she entered, the lobby fell silent. Her steps were slow, steady, heavy, with decades of grief. She asked to see the detective who had reopened the case, and when she sat down across from him, her voice trembled with something between hope and terror. "Is she alive?" she asked. The detective lowered his eyes. They had no body, no remains, no confirmation, only evidence of possession, not proof of fate. And yet the silence felt like its own answer. That night, the city didn't sleep. Windows glowed past midnight, radios stayed on, conversations circled endlessly around the same questions. The fog of 2 decades had lifted suddenly, revealing only more shadows. And in the center of those shadows sat Adrian, a man who had carried a secret for 20 years, with the composure of someone holding a cup of water. But as the hours crawled by, detectives began to notice something strange. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. It was as if the arrest wasn't a disruption in his life, but the final step in a story he had already accepted. The calmness unsettled everyone. It made the detectives search harder. It made the community fear more deeply. And it made Elise's mother realize something she had never wanted to consider, that the truth, when it finally surfaced, might be more horrifying than the silence that preceded it. Adrian said nothing, but his silence was not empty. It was a door waiting to be opened. Night settled over Bordeaux with a tension you could taste in the air, a thick metallic heaviness that clung to door frames and drifted through alleyways like an echo of something unfinished. The city hummed in low whispers, cafes murmuring with speculation, apartment windows glowing as families rehashed the day's shock news anchors, repeating the same sentence with grave urgency. A surprise arrest has been made in the 2001 disappearance of Elise Moreau. It was the kind of night where even the streetlights seemed to wait, flickering like nervous eyes trying to pierce through the dark. Inside the police station, the atmosphere had shifted from electric to suffocating. Detectives had expected a confession, or at least resistance or anger or tears, but not this, not the stillness, not the unsettling calm radiating from a man who should have been unraveling under pressure. Adrien Leclerc sat at the metal table as if it were simply another day at work, as though the cameras watching him were harmless, as though the officers questioning him were old friends stopping by for conversation. He showed no fear, no guilt, no defiance, not even curiosity. It was the kind of composure that didn't soothe, it provoked. Officers found themselves leaning in without realizing it, waiting for cracks to appear, waiting for something to slip. But nothing slipped. Adrien was a man-shaped vault, sealed tight. Detective Rousseau, who had taken over the cold case 5 years earlier out of stubborn loyalty rather than hope, watched him from behind the glass. She studied the way he rested his hands neatly, one over the other, the way his shoulders remained even posture unbroken, the way he blinked slow, rhythmic, deliberate. She had seen murderers break down within minutes. She had seen innocent men shake uncontrollably. But this was something else. "He's not hiding," she whispered to her colleague. "He's waiting." For what the colleague asked, for us to catch up. Shift change came and went. The clock ticked past midnight, scratching minutes onto the surface of the investigation like shallow scars. And still Adrien said nothing. Not even when they placed the metal locker items in front of him. Not even when they slid the photographs across the table. Not even when they referenced Elise's name aloud for the first time. But the detectives noticed something, a subtle tightening of his jaw when her name was spoken, barely perceptible but unmistakable. It was the first flicker of emotion, and it was enough to send adrenaline surging through the room like a second wind. Detective Rousseau entered the room at 12:47 a.m., closing the door quietly behind her. She sat down across from Adrien, notepad, untouched, pen-capped hands folded. She didn't speak immediately. She let the silence settle, thick and pressing. He looked at her for the first time, eyes dark, unreadable. "Adrien," she said gently, "we need your help understanding Elise." His gaze flicked downward for a fraction of a second, an involuntary movement, but a meaningful one. It was enough to confirm he had known her not by chance, not in passing, but in a way that struck the heart. "You were seen near Rue des Fauvettes the night she disappeared," she continued. "2 witnesses described a man matching your build. You knew the area. You worked near her route. You had access to the place where her belongings were hidden." Still nothing. The silence grew sharper, more jagged. Rousseau leaned forward. "Tell me what happened." Adrien finally exhaled, slowly, deeply, as if releasing a breath he had been holding for years. But he didn't speak. Instead, his eyes drifted to the corner of the room where a small red light from the camera glowed like a surveillance heartbeat. "Someone is always watching," he murmured. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a blade. Detectives behind the glass froze. Rousseau felt her pulse spike. "Who's watching, Adrien?" she asked. But he didn't answer. His gaze dropped to the table, and the silence returned, thicker than before. Outside the room, the forensic report arrived with the subtlety of an earthquake. The DNA found inside the locker didn't just belong to Elise, it belonged to someone else too. A faint trace, almost degraded, but still identifiable enough to raise dread in every heart that saw the result. A second unidentified female. And just like that, the investigation changed shape. This wasn't just about Elise anymore. Detectives pulled phone records, missing person archives, unidentified remains lists. A chilling possibility seeped into their thoughts like ink spreading through water. If Adrien had taken Elise? What if she wasn't the first or the last? Detective Rousseau felt the weight settle on her shoulders like a cold hand. She re-entered the room, evidence in hand. "Adrien," she said, "whose DNA did we find with Elise's belongings?" He didn't flinch, not even slightly. But his fingers tapped the table once, twice, a pattern forming rhythmic and controlled. Rousseau realized it wasn't random, it was deliberate. Tap, pause, tap, tap, pause, tap. A code, a signal, a tick. She couldn't be sure, but the consistency was unnerving. She set the DNA report in front of him. "We know Elise wasn't the only one." Adrien's tapping stopped abruptly. His hands went still. He raised his head slowly and looked directly into her eyes. For the first time, something sparked behind his expression, not fear, not guilt, but something that made Rousseau's skin tighten. "Recognition. Not of her, but of the moment." "You're late," he whispered. The words struck the room like thunder. Goosebumps erupted on arms. Someone outside gasped softly. Rousseau's breath caught. Late for what? She asked, voice steady, despite the quickening of her heartbeat. Adrian leaned back as if settling into a story he had rehearsed for years. She waited, he said. Rousseau's spine stiffened. Who waited? He didn't answer. He lowered his gaze once more, hands folding neatly, expression drained of emotion. A vault closing again. Detectives scrambled to trace missing women from the region, searching for cases with similarities, disappearances, without struggle, without leads, without closure. Files spread across desks, photos pinned to whiteboards, maps marked with red dots forming a constellation of dread. And, little by little, a pattern began to emerge, faint but undeniable. 5 women, over 12 years, all within a 20-kilometer radius of Adrian's workplace, all vanished without trace. All their cases slid quietly into the archives as authorities shifted resources elsewhere, all unsolved. The building buzzed with urgency, with something like fear dressed in professional restraint. Every officer felt it now, the sense that they were dealing with a man whose crimes might run deeper than they had ever imagined. But still they needed proof. They needed a body. They needed a confession, and Adrian wasn't giving them one. Just after 3 a.m., one of the younger officers rushed into the squad room with a file in hand, face pale. There's something else, he said, breathless. You need to see this. He placed a photograph on the table, a grainy image, a crowd, a search party from 2001 combing the woods for Elise. In the far background, half hidden by branches, stood a man watching. The shape was blurry, the details incomplete, but the stance, the posture, the profile, it was Adrian, watching, calm, unmoving. Rousseau felt a chill slither down her spine. She had never believed in ghosts, but at that moment, she wondered if some people were their own kind of haunting, lingering in places they should never have been, leaving marks that only appear when the light shifts. The photograph changed everything, but not as much as the next discovery. At 3:42 a.m., forensics delivered the final analysis from the wooden box found in Adrian's closet. The fibers stuck to the bottom were not from the towel, not from the photographs. They were from soil. Soil containing traces of a specific mixture, sand, clay, and limestone. Detective Rousseau knew that blend. It belonged to one place, the forest at the edge of Bordeaux, the place where Elise's phone was found, the place where Adrian had watched the search teams, the place the city had walked through for 20 years without knowing what rested beneath their feet. Rousseau went back into the interrogation room one last time that night. The air felt electrified, charged with something unspoken. Adrian, she said quietly, we're going to the forest. He finally looked up again. A small smile, thin, sharp, unsettling, touched the corner of his mouth, and he whispered almost gently, you'll find what's left of the truth. The forest waited like a living creature holding its breath, a labyrinth of shadows trembling under the faint light of dawn. Trees leaned inward as if eavesdropping on the officers who stepped past the trail markers, boots sinking into damp earth that smelled of rot moss and secrets buried too long. A cold wind threaded itself between branches, carrying the faintest scent of soil. Turned recently, or long ago, it was impossible to tell. Detective Rousseau felt it cling to her skin like a warning. The same forest they had searched 2 decades earlier now felt completely different, as though time had altered its shape to conceal what should have been found. Adrian was not with them. Protocol forbade it, but his final words lingered like an invisible presence walking among them. You'll find what's left of the truth. The sentence curled into Rousseau's mind, quiet but sharp, a blade resting just above her nerves. She pushed forward, her flashlight trembling slightly in her grip. Dawn brought no comfort. If anything, the faint gray light made everything look washed out, ghost-like, as if the world itself was reluctant to reveal what lay beneath its surface. Officers moved in a slow, methodical sweep. This was not the chaotic search of 2001. This was focused, driven by evidence, by science, by a man whose calm hinted that he knew exactly where they would end up. The soil analysis had led them to a particular clearing near the river, an area dismissed years ago because the ground had been too frozen to dig. It had been searched by foot, but never disturbed deeply. And now, standing at the edge of it, Rousseau felt a surge of dread that seemed to rise from the earth itself. A forensic expert knelt, scooping a handful of soil into a plastic bag. He looked up at her with an expression she didn't like. "It's a match," he said softly. "Same mixture as the fibers from the box." Her throat tightened. The clearing stretched before them, quiet and still, a space that seemed to pulse with anticipation. Birds refused to sing. Even the river nearby flowed with muted restraint, the usual chatter of water hushed to a whisper. "Begin excavation," Rousseau ordered. Shovels sank into the earth with dull, heavy thuds. The sound repeated rhythmic and relentless, disturbing layers of untouched soil. Officers worked in silent coordination, their breaths forming clouds in the chilled air. Each scoop of earth felt like opening a chapter no one wanted to read. A tension settled over them, a fear that what they were doing would not just answer questions, but create new ones, darker and heavier. Minutes stretched into an hour. The hole deepened. Nothing but roots, rocks, and cold soil. And then, "Stop," someone whispered. The digging halted instantly. Rousseau stepped forward, heart pounding like a drum against her ribs. The forensic technician brushed dirt aside with gloved hands, revealing something pale beneath the soil. Not bone, not yet, but fabric, thin, degraded, barely holding its shape. A scrap of material stained by time. Her breath caught. A tremor passed through the circle of officers. "Keep going," she said, voice steady despite the storm inside her. Soil lifted piece by piece until the outline of something unmistakably human began to emerge, fragile and horrifying. A skeletal arm, a shard of a rib cage, a jawbone still partially intact. The remains lay curled as if the person had been trying to protect themselves in their final moment. Rousseau closed her eyes briefly, the weight of the discovery pressing against her chest. This wasn't Elise. The bones were too old, too weathered. This was someone else, someone whose disappearance had never made headlines, someone whose story had slipped through the cracks of memory. Within minutes, a second set of skeletal remains was found a few meters away. Then a third. 3 bodies, 3 women, 3 stories swallowed by earth. A cold case had just mutated into something else entirely. One of the younger officers backed away, hand covering his mouth, fighting back a wave of dizziness. Another muttered a curse under his breath. The air seemed to tighten with each new discovery, every body a testament to a hunt that should have started years earlier. Rousseau felt her pulse, thundering, a raw mixture of shock and rage twisting through her veins. She knelt, ignoring the dirt staining her pants, and examined the remains carefully. Something glimmered faintly beneath the bones of the second body. She reached in gently, pulling out a delicate object, a necklace rusted, but still recognizable, a small silver leaf. Her breath shuddered. "She wore this," whispered an officer. "I saw the photo in the archive." The victim was identified before any forensic confirmation. A missing woman from 1994, a case closed as suicide due to lack of evidence. Rousseau felt the ground tilt beneath her. Adrian had been here long before Elise. Back at the station, as the forest excavation continued, Adrian sat alone in his cell, hands resting calmly on his knees. The faint light overhead flickered, casting long shadows that stretched across the cold floor. His expression didn't shift when the door opened and Detective Rousseau entered, still wearing the dirt-stained jacket from the forest. She didn't sit. She didn't soften her tone. "We found them," she said. Adrian blinked once, slow and heavy. 3 victims, she continued. 3 women we didn't even know to look for. He remained silent, but something in his posture changed, shoulders tightening, jaw stiffening. The smallest reaction, yet the only one she had seen so far that resembled tension. "How many are there?" she asked. His eyes met hers, dark and hollow. A void. "Enough," he murmured. The word was soft, almost gentle, and utterly terrifying. Rousseau stepped closer to the bars. "Tell me their names." Adrian tilted his head. "I didn't take names." The room seemed to exhale in a long, cold shiver. Rousseau felt anger rise like heat beneath her skin. "Elise didn't deserve this," she said. "None of them did. None." He studied her face, unreadable. "People disappear," he said quietly. "Some are meant to be found. Some aren't." She slammed her hand against the bars. "What did you do to her?" Adrian leaned forward until his face was inches from hers. For the first time, she saw something flicker in his eyes, something twisted, something that resembled a thrill. "You're digging in the wrong place," he whispered. She recoiled slightly, breath faltering. "What do you mean?" Adrian stepped back into the shadows, the fluorescent light failing to reach him fully. "The forest is only the beginning." A chill rippled through her chest. She felt the implications tightening around her like a noose. "Where is she?" Rousseau demanded. Adrian's voice drifted from the darkness of the cell, soft, distant, chilling. "You'll know when the ground stops lying." Rousseau left the cell, trembling not from fear, but from the oppressive certainty that she had just brushed against something monstrous, something that lived not in the earth, but in the mind of a man who drew boundaries between truth and deception, like an artist drawing lines on a canvas. Back in the forest, search teams uncovered more. A shallow grave filled not with bones, but with objects. Pieces of clothing, scraps of paper, a broken hair clip, a small empty perfume bottle, items belonging to different women. A collector's grave, a shrine of possession. The sky grew darker despite the rising morning sun clouds rolling in thick waves. Rain threatened the wind, shifting with sudden aggression. It felt as if the forest resisted the intrusion, as if nature itself recoiled from the horrors being pulled from its soil. At noon, as the excavation expanded, a canine unit alerted to a patch of ground deeper in the woods, far from the original site. The dog scratched frantically, barking with urgency. Officers rushed in. They dug and dug, but no body surfaced, no bones. Only a small weathered object dug free from the earth. A key, a house key, attached to a sunflower keychain. Elise's sunflower. Rousseau stared at it in her gloved hand, heart plummeting. Not buried with a body. Not part of a grave, placed deliberately, like a breadcrumb, a message. Adrian was guiding them. But why? She turned toward the trees as wind whipped through the branches, sending leaves shredding through the air like warnings. For a moment, in the shifting shadows, she imagined a figure standing between the trunks, tall, still watching. Just like Adrian had watched the search teams in 2001. A cold wave washed down her spine. Adrian wasn't afraid because he wasn't hiding. He was leading them, somewhere deeper, somewhere worse. She tightened her grip on the key, her breath sharp, her voice breaking the uneasy quiet with words that she felt crawling through her blood. "He wants us to keep digging." The forest seemed to shrink around them as the day stretched on, its silence growing heavier, the trees leaning closer as if trying to swallow the investigation whole. Officers moved with stiff shoulders and cautious steps, every rustle of leaves sounding like a warning, every shift of the wind carrying the suggestion that they were not alone. But the realization that chilled everyone wasn't the fear of being watched, it was the growing certainty that they were being directed. Adrian had left them a key, placed like a marker on a path only he understood, a trail that felt less like a lead and more like a trap. Detective Rousseau turned the sunflower keychain over in her hand, feeling the cold metal bite through the latex glove. Elise's key? Elise's sunflower? The same cheerful charm her mother had described through tears 20 years ago. But this wasn't found near remains. It wasn't buried deep. It wasn't hidden to escape detection. It was left placed intentionally, almost gently, like someone guiding a child by the hand through a maze. Rousseau stared into the forest, breath shallow. "He's playing with us," she muttered. The lead forensic officer approached, voice low. No remains nearby, no burial site, just the key. "What about soil disturbance?" "Minimal, maybe a few months old, maybe older, hard to tell." Rousseau felt a pulse of dread, so he came back here. Recently. The implication slashed through the team like an icy blade. Adrian hadn't just killed and disappeared, he'd returned, watching the forest decay around his secrets, walking among the ghosts he had buried in silence. He had come back to maintain the illusion of distance, to refresh the trail, to judge whether the city had forgotten. He had come back to check whether anyone was still looking. And now, after 2 decades, Bordeaux was finally looking again. The radios crackled, breaking the fragile stillness. "Detective Rousseau, we've got movement at the station. You need to return." She hesitated, eyes sweeping the tree line. "What happened?" "A visitor," the voice said. "Someone asking about the case." "Who?" A pause, a breath. "Elise's mother." Rousseau's stomach tightened. The forest suddenly felt suffocating, the wind laden with grief she wasn't ready to face. She made her way out, boots heavy with mud, mind fractured between the horrors uncovered, and the mother who had endured 20 years of unanswered questions. Back at the station, the fluorescent lights felt too bright, too sterile, as if denying the brutality uncovered in the woods. Elise's mother sat in the waiting area, small-tired, wrapped in a coat too thin for the weather. Her hands twisted the strap of her purse with restless tension. Her eyes flicked up when Rousseau entered, and in that instant, guilt carved a deep crack through Rousseau's chest. "You found something," the mother whispered. Rousseau swallowed hard. "We found evidence. Evidence of Elise." The hope in her voice was delicate trembling like a candle exposed to sudden wind. "Evidence connected to her," Rousseau said carefully, "but also evidence connected to others." The woman's breath hitched. She grasped the pendant on her necklace, the same silver heart she'd worn during every interview, every vigil, every moment she begged the world not to forget her daughter. "Is she alive?" Rousseau felt the question pierce her. She shook her head slowly. "We don't know yet, but we're closer than we've ever been." The mother's eyes shimmered with restrained tears. "Please," she said, "don't let her be alone out there." Rousseau forced herself to meet the woman's gaze. "We won't." Behind her, a door opened with a metallic clatter. Adrian was being escorted to the interrogation room again, wrists bound, steps controlled. Elise's mother flinched at the sound, her eyes locked on Adrian's figure as he passed through the hallway, and for a moment, the briefest, sharpest moment, his gaze flicked toward her. It was subtle, a glance, a fraction of a second. But something in that tiny movement sent a ripple of pure terror through the air. The mother collapsed into her chair, trembling. "He looked at me," she whispered. "He looked like he knew me." Rousseau turned sharply toward the hallway, adrenaline spiking. Adrian wasn't supposed to react. He wasn't supposed to care. He wasn't supposed to notice anything. But he had. She rushed into the interrogation room, moments later, slamming the door behind her. Adrian sat calmly, hands resting on the table head, slightly tilted, as if listening to something just out of human hearing. "Why did you look at her?" Rousseau demanded. Adrian blinked slow and deliberate. "Because she was looking at me." "What did you see?" "A mother," he said simply. Rousseau gritted her teeth. "Don't play games with me." Adrian leaned forward, eyes settling on hers with a clarity that felt like staring into a deep, cold well. "Do you think I didn't know she would come today?" he murmured. "Mothers always return when truth begins to rise." A chill slithered beneath her skin. "Where is Elise?" Adrian gave a faint smile. "Closer than you think." Her pulse hammered. "Tell me where." "Detective," he whispered, "if I told you, you would stop looking. And you're not ready to stop." Rousseau slammed her hands onto the table, fury surging. "You're done controlling this investigation?" But Adrian only tilted his head again, studying her like a specimen under glass. "Control," he echoed. "I lost control the day she screamed." Rousseau froze. It was the first direct acknowledgement of the night Elise vanished. "You were there," she said softly. Adrian's eyes lowered. "Everyone was there," he whispered. "They just didn't hear her." She felt ice crawl through her veins. "Where did you take her?" Adrian exhaled, as if tired of the conversation. "Detective, you're still digging in the wrong place." She stared at him shocked. "We found bodies, we found evidence, but not her," he said. "Elise is different." Different. The word hung in the air like smoke. "Why?" Rousseau demanded. Adrian's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Because she wasn't meant to disappear." Rousseau felt the floor sway under her feet. "What do you mean?" "She left something behind," Adrian murmured. Her heart raced. "What did she leave?" He looked up, eyes sharpening. "A witness." The room turned silent, thick enough to suffocate. Rousseau's mind raced. Elise had no children, no partner. She had lived alone. She had walked home alone. She had vanished alone. There was no witness, Rousseau said. Adrian smiled faintly. "Not one you looked for." She stepped back, breath quickening. "Tell me who." Adrian closed his eyes. "I'll tell you," he said softly when the ground stops lying. Before she could respond, an officer burst into the room, face pale, breath unsteady. "Detective, you need to see this." Rousseau followed him down the hall, boots echoing sharply. Officers parted as she approached a small evidence table. On it lay an object freshly delivered from the forest excavation. A shoe. A woman's shoe. But not old, not weathered, not from 2001. Clean, recent. Rousseau picked it up with shaking hands. "This wasn't buried," the forensic officer said. "It was placed on the surface. Sometime in the last 48 hours. Rousseau's blood ran cold. Whose is it? The officer swallowed hard. Preliminary match. Elise. The room spun. Elise's shoe. Not decayed, not aged, not 2 decades old. Placed recently. Which meant either someone else had it, or Elise had been kept somewhere all these years. Alive. Rousseau stared at the shoe heart pounding breath trapped in her chest. Behind her, Adrian's voice echoed faintly through the hallway as guards returned him to his cell. Some truths don't die, he murmured. They wait. Rousseau staggered back, the weight of the implication crushing her. If Elise's shoe was recent, then the cold case was no longer cold. Someone was still moving pieces. Someone was still watching. Someone was still out there. And Elise Moreau's story was far from over. The shoe sat in Rousseau's hands like a heartbeat, frozen in time, a small and silent object that screamed louder than any witness ever had. It was impossibly clean. No mold, no rot, no soil embedded in the seams. A shoe that should have aged 20 years, but hadn't aged a day. Whatever truth it carried thrummed beneath its surface like electricity waiting to surge. Officers whispered around her, their voices small, brittle, struggling to fit this discovery into any rational timeline. Elise has been gone since 2001, one officer said, trembling. This doesn't make sense. But Rousseau felt something snap into focus inside her, a terrible clarity she didn't want but couldn't ignore. It made perfect sense. The shoe was recent because someone wanted them to find it. Someone wanted to rewrite the narrative. Someone with access, with knowledge, with a reason to keep Elise alive or to make them believe she was still alive. And only one person fit all 3 categories. Adrian. Rousseau's breath came fast and shallow. Get Adrian back into interrogation, she snapped. But the officer beside her shook his head. He hasn't asked for a lawyer. He hasn't spoken since you left. He's just sitting there. Bring him anyway. She marched down the hallway. The shoe gripped tightly in her hand, her pulse pounding in furious waves. She burst into the interrogation room, dropping the shoe onto the metal table with a sharp thud. Explain this, she demanded. Adrian looked at the shoe, expression unchanged, no surprise, no curiosity, no fear. Only a faint, unsettling calm. He tilted his head slightly, like someone observing an object he'd forgotten existed. I wondered when you'd find that, he murmured. Rousseau felt every muscle in her body tighten. This shoe is from the last 48 hours. Not 20 years. Where did you get it? Adrian didn't blink. You assume I placed it. You're the only one who could. He leaned forward, slightly, eyes gleaming with something cold and opaque. Detective, I've been in custody. Your custody. If the shoe is new, someone else put it there. Rousseau froze, dread crawling slowly up her spine. Who? Adrian exhaled softly, almost thoughtfully. The same person who took Elise. Her heart slammed against her ribs. You didn't take her. His gaze sharpened. I never said that. Rousseau's breath faltered. Then what are you saying? Adrian sat back, fingers intertwined, expression unreadable. I knew her. I followed her. I watched her. But I wasn't the only one. The words hit her like a blow to the chest. Who was the other one, she asked. Adrian's lips curled upward, not a smile, but something thinner, something crueler. The witness. She gripped the table. You said Elise left behind a witness. Who? He closed his eyes slowly, as if savoring the moment before the reveal. Someone who was there when she disappeared. Someone who never spoke. Someone who kept the truth buried until now. Her mind raced. Elise had no one in her apartment. No witnesses, no neighbors awake, no companions, no partner. Unless a thought colder than the forest dirt punched through her chest. Are you saying Elise wasn't alone the night she vanished? Adrian's eyes snapped open. She was never alone. The air thickened, pressing against Rousseau's lungs. The implications spun violently. Someone else was involved. Someone else had stalked her. Someone else had taken her. Someone else had lived silently in the shadows of this case for 20 years. Rousseau forced her voice steady. Tell me who. But Adrian didn't look at her. He stared at the wall as if the answer were written there in some language only he understood. Find the place she left, he said softly, and you'll find the witness. Rousseau's jaw clenched. Adrian, enough with riddles. Where? He cut her off with a whisper so soft it seemed to float between them like smoke. Go back to her apartment. Her stomach twisted. Elise's apartment had been searched countless times by police, by volunteers, by her family. There was nothing left. No sign of forced entry, no clues, no hidden spaces. She shook her head. That apartment was cleared 20 years ago. Not by me, Adrian said. Rousseau felt a shiver rake down her spine. What would we find there now? A secret she hid from everyone. Her voice wavered. What kind of secret? Adrian finally looked at her eyes dark with a truth she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. The kind that breathes, he said. Rousseau stumbled back a step. The room felt suddenly too small, the walls too close, the air too thin. Her radio crackled, but she barely heard it over the pounding of her heartbeat. Detective Rousseau, a voice said urgently, you need to come to Elise's old building. She snapped to attention. Why? A neighbor just reported something strange. You need to see it yourself. Rousseau bolted out of the room, ignoring Adrian's final words echoing behind her like a curse. The ground lies, detective. Walls don't. Elise's old apartment building hadn't changed much in 20 years. Same yellowed bricks, same cracked entryway, same dim stairwell that smelled faintly of dust and forgotten lives. But tonight it felt different, as if the walls themselves were bracing for something to be revealed. Rousseau climbed the stairs 2 at a time, following the neighbor, a frail old man with trembling hands, down the hallway. I heard something, he whispered, a few hours after the news broke, like scratching or knocking, coming from inside her old apartment. That place is vacant, Rousseau said. He shook his head violently. No, someone's been in there. I hear things at night, movement, a voice sometimes, soft, like someone talking to themselves. Rousseau's pulse hammered. Why didn't you report this earlier? His eyes filled with tears. Because I thought I was losing my mind. She reached the door. The number 3B was still faded, peeling ghost-like. She tested the knob locked. Officers arrived with tools, prying the door open with a sharp crack. The apartment was dark. Cold. Dust floated in the air like old memories resisting disturbance. The living room looked untouched, abandoned, forgotten. The kitchen surfaces were too clean as if someone had wiped them recently. Rousseau stepped inside, flashlight sweeping across the walls. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. She followed the corridor to the bedroom. That's when she saw it. Scratches on the inside of the closet door. Fresh scratches, dragged downward in long, desperate lines. Her breath hitched. Detective and officer called out from the living room. You need to see this. Rousseau rushed back out. The officer pointed at something near the window. A message, scrawled in dust. 3 words. Not alone here. Rousseau's blood turned to ice. Check the whole apartment, she ordered. Every corner, every vent, A scream cut her off. Not loud. Not long. A short, sharp gasp of terror from the bathroom. Officers dashed toward it. Rousseau pushed through the doorway and froze. Behind the bathroom cabinet, hidden behind a grate that had been unscrewed, recently curled in a fetal position, lay a woman, alive, thin, filthy, eyes wide with terror, hands trembling, lips cracked, hair matted. The woman looked up, blinking against the light. Her voice broke. He said you would come. Rousseau's heart stalled in her chest. Who? She whispered. The woman swallowed tears, streaming. The man who took Elise. The room spun. Someone else, not Adrian. Someone still free. Someone still watching. Someone still out there. The woman coughed, voice shaking violently. Please, he's coming back. Rousseau knelt closer. Who? Tell me who. The woman's lips quivered, and then she whispered a name that made Rousseau's entire body go cold. A name that meant the case was about to explode into something darker, deeper, more tangled than anything she had prepared for. A name tied not to a stranger, but to someone close, very close. And the voice trembling from the trembling woman's throat delivered it with devastating clarity. Officer Duval. The name hit the room like a detonation. Silent at first, then ripping through every officer present with the force of an unseen blast. Officer Duval. A name spoken in a whisper, thinner than a breath, yet heavy enough to crush the air out of the hallway. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Time itself seemed to hesitate, as if refusing to acknowledge what it had just heard. Rousseau felt her vision narrow, the edges darkening for a second. Repeat that, she said, kneeling closer. The woman's eyes flickered with terror, pupils blown wide like she'd been kept in darkness for days. Her voice quivered. Duval. The one with the scar. He brought me food sometimes. He said I was a secret. He said I wasn't supposed to be found. Rousseau's heartbeat thundered so loudly she could barely hear her own voice. Are you sure? Look at me. Are you absolutely sure it was Officer Duval? The woman nodded, tears streaking the grime on her cheeks. I remember his voice, his boots, the way he said my name. Rousseau stood abruptly so fast the room seemed to tilt. Officers exchanged horrified glances. One of them whispered, "Duval's on duty today. He's in the building. He's..." The words sank in like poison. The tremor beneath Rousseau's ribs turned into something colder, something clawing its way up her spine. "Lock the building down," she ordered. "Now." Officers scattered. Radios erupted with overlapping commands. Doors slammed. Boots thundered across the hall. The station transformed instantly from a place of order into a tightening trap, one where a predator might be walking freely among them, wearing a badge and a calm, familiar smile. The rescued woman clung to Rousseau's sleeve. "Please," she whispered, "don't let him find me." Rousseau squeezed her hand gently. "He won't, not anymore." But even as she said the words, dread slithered across her shoulders like something alive. Duval had been with the Bordeaux Police Department for nearly 15 years. Well-liked, dependable, quiet, efficient, the kind of officer people trusted without thinking twice. And now, with a single trembling whisper, he had transformed from colleague to possible predator. Worse, someone with access authority knowledge of police protocols, someone who could hide evidence, manipulate searches, steer investigations, someone who could keep a victim alive or trapped for reasons no one yet understood. Rousseau pushed through the hallway, barking orders. "Find Duval, don't engage alone. He may be armed, he is to be taken alive." Her words ricocheted through the building. But even before the manhunt began, a realization hit her like a blade to the chest. If Duval was the real abductor, if he had kept a victim hidden, if he had returned Elise's shoe, if he had been manipulating the investigation, then Adrien, was he a decoy or something worse? She stopped mid-stride, chest tightening with a terrifying possibility, two predators, not one, intersecting, overlapping, feeding off the same shadow. The ground beneath this case wasn't just unstable, it was collapsing. She spun around. "Where's Adrien?" In his cell, an officer said, "He hasn't moved. Keep 3 guards on him. No one goes near him. No one." She sprinted back toward the interrogation wing, but before she reached the door, a voice crackled through the radio, tight, urgent, terrified. "We've got movement on the south stairwell. Someone's running. Suspect is heading to the basement. Level. Repeat, suspect is..." The transmission cut off abruptly. Rousseau drew a sharp breath. Duval's trying to escape. Chaos erupted around her officers, surging toward the stairwell, but Rousseau's instincts jolted her in a different direction toward Adrienne's cell. Because if Duval was running now, Adrienne would know why, and that knowledge might be the only thing keeping Elise alive. She burst into the detention wing. Adrienne looked up the moment she appeared, as if he'd been waiting, as if he'd known. Rousseau slammed her hands on the bars. "It's Duval." The woman named him. "Tell me everything. Now." Adrienne's eyes glimmered with eerie satisfaction. "Ah, so the wall finally speaks." "Tell me where he took Elise," Rousseau shouted. Adrienne leaned into the shadows, expression twisting with something almost serpentine. "Duval was always sentimental," he murmured. "He keeps what he loves close, too close." "Where?" Adrienne smiled faintly. "You won't find her on the ground. You need to look above." "Above." Rousseau felt her pulse stutter. "Above where?" But Adrienne only whispered, "You're running out of time." Her radio crackled violently, screams, metal hitting concrete, an officer shouting, "He's got a weapon!" Gunshots, 2, then silence. Cold fear sliced through her. Rousseau raced down the hallway, heart pounding against her ribs with violent intensity. Officers converged toward the basement corridor, weapons drawn. The air smelled of gunpowder and dust. Someone was shouting for a medic. Rousseau pushed through the cluster. 2 officers on the ground, one alive, the other not. Blood pooling fast. And Duval? Gone. He had vanished into the maze of storage rooms and service tunnels beneath the station. Emergency sirens wailed, doors were sealed, officers searched violently, desperately, but Rousseau felt something colder than fear spreading through her. Duval hadn't run blindly. He had a plan. He knew every exit, every blind spot, every route that cameras didn't reach. He'd been preparing for this moment long before his name was spoken aloud, which meant he had somewhere to go, somewhere hidden, somewhere he had taken Elise. Rousseau found herself running again, mind racing with Adrienne's clues. Above, the walls speak. She left something behind, the witness. He keeps what he loves close. She skidded to a halt in front of a large city map pinned on the wall. Her eyes scanned the lines, the streets, the old structures. Something tugged at her memory. Elise's building, the scratches, the hidden captive, the message on the window. Not alone here. The apartment had been abandoned officially. But the layout, a thought slammed into her consciousness. Above, her mind spiraled back to the night Elise disappeared. Witness accounts, a scream, a shadow crossing the roof, a detail dismissed as imagination at the time. The roof. Not the road, not the forest. The roof. Her breath caught. "Get me the architectural plans for Elise's building," she yelled. Now! Minutes later, she had them spread out before her. Lines, measurements, notations. And then she saw it. A crawl space above the 3rd floor. Unmarked, forgotten. A pocket of darkness between floors. Accessible only from maintenance panels. Maintenance. Duval had been part of the precinct building maintenance rotation for years before joining the police force. He knew how to access hidden spaces. He could move unseen. He could hide someone alive. Rousseau's voice ripped through the hallway. "We're going back to 3B. Wait." They reached the building in under 10 minutes, the wheels of the unmarked car screeching as it pulled to a stop. Officers poured out, storming up the stairwell. Rousseau moved faster than her legs could understand, adrenaline propelling her through the apartment door. "Clear the bedroom. Drop the closet panel," she commanded. 2 officers yanked the closet apart. Dust rained down. A hidden maintenance grate revealed itself. "Break it," she ordered. Metal groaned. Screws cracked. The grate fell forward. A black void yawned above them. A space large enough for a person. Possibly 2. The stale air that poured down was thick with something new, something faint, but unmistakably human. Rousseau lifted her flashlight. Its beam pierced the darkness. Something moved. A soft trembling shift. A whisper. Then a voice. Fragile, weak, familiar. "Help!" Rousseau's heart nearly stopped. "Elise," she whispered. Silence. Then, "Don't let him find me." Her hands shook. "Elise, we're here. You're safe now." But before she could climb up, before she could reach the trapped voice trembling in the darkness, a sound echoed from above. A creak. Soft. Slow. Like someone stepping on old wood. Someone else was inside the crawl space. Someone waiting. Watching. Breathing. Duval. Rousseau's blood turned to ice. "Lights out," she screamed. Officers cut their flashlights. The world plunged into darkness. And above them, in the black void, something shifted. Closer. Then a voice cold and calm drifted down like a chill. "You shouldn't have come here alone, detective." The darkness swallowed everything, the walls, the air, the trembling breath inside Rousseau's lungs. Silence hung like a blade suspended over the room, sharp and waiting. And in that suspended moment, the world felt stripped of sound, except for the faint, ragged inhale drifting from the crawl space above. Duval's voice seeped into the void like a toxin, soft and steady, the calm of a man who had been preparing for this confrontation long before anyone else realized a confrontation existed. "You shouldn't have come here alone, detective." Rousseau's fingers tightened around her holstered weapon. Her muscles locked in a vice of adrenaline and dread. She forced her breathing low, controlled, silent. Officers around her shifted subtly, spreading out in the dark hearts, pounding loud enough she feared he could hear them. But Duval wasn't focused on them. He was focused on her. His voice rolled down like a whisper wrapped in a threat. "Turn the lights back on." Rousseau didn't move. That wasn't a suggestion, he added. She kept her voice steady. "Put your hands where I can see them." A soft laugh followed quiet, but slicing through the darkness like a scalpel. "Detective, you can't see anything. That's the problem." A scrape, faint but deliberate, echoed above. Someone shifting. Someone moving toward the rear of the crawl space. Rousseau's heart froze. "Elise." She steadied her stance, bracing herself. "Duval, we know what you've done. It's over. You're surrounded." "No," he murmured. "It's only beginning." Then the sound changed, rapid breath, a sudden scuffle. Something sliding across dust. Elise's panicked whisper tore through the void, raw and terrified. "Please don't." Rousseau shot upward. Flashlight flicking back on despite her instinct's beam slicing into the crawl space. The dust danced like rising smoke. Shapes shifted. A shadow lunged. "Now," Rousseau yelled. Officers raised their lights, simultaneously, beams colliding into the cramped darkness. And for a split frozen moment, they saw him. Officer Duval, crouched like a predator body, coiled face streaked with sweat and grime, eyes fever bright. His badge hung crooked on his chest, the symbol of trust twisted into something grotesque. His hand gripped Elise's arm so tightly her skin blanched beneath the pressure. She was thinner than the last victim they'd found, almost ghostly skin, pale as wax hair, tangled around her face like dark vines. Duval's free hand held a knife. "Stay back," he warned, blade flashing in the light. Rousseau aimed her weapon. "Let her go." "No," he whispered, voice cracking with something both frantic and intimate. "She's not yours." Elise whimpered, head drooping. "Please, please." Rousseau took a step forward, hand steady, though her pulse roared. "Duval, listen to me. Whatever you're thinking, whatever story you've built ends now. Put the knife down." But he shook his head slowly, the movement small but filled with madness. "You don't understand," he breathed. "They were chosen. All of them. Adrian saw the same light I did. He saw the signs." Rousseau's blood chilled. Adrian was involved. Duval laughed, a sharp sound that cracked like brittle glass. "Involved detective?" Adrian was blind. He stumbled into something far greater than himself. He followed instinct. But I, his eyes gleamed with a terrible pride. I followed purpose. Rousseau swallowed the rising bile. "Purpose, you abducted them." Duval leaned closer to Elise, fingers trembling where they gripped her arm. "I saved them." The words turned her stomach. "No, you destroyed them." "I protected them from the world," he said, voice tightening, "and the world from them." His gaze locked with Rousseau's pupils, blown wide with delusion. "You think Elise was ordinary? You think she was just another girl walking home? You should have heard the things she said. The things she knew." Elise whimpered again, shaking her head weakly. No, he's lying." Duval jerked her roughly, and she cried out. Rousseau felt a raw surge of fury burn through her veins. "Duval, drop the knife." "She knew I was coming for her before I even approached," he whispered. Just like the others. They whispered to each other when the moon was high. They sensed things. Rousseau's voice dropped. "You're sick." Duval smiled faintly. "I'm awake." The crawl space trembled with tension. Officers held their weapons at ready, but the tight confines made firing dangerous. One wrong shot and Elise could be hit. Rousseau raised her other hand, palm open, voice softening. "Duval, look at her. Look at what you've done to her. If you ever cared about her." "I cared too much," he said, voice cracking. "That was the problem." His grip on Elise tightened. Her breathing grew rapid, shallow, panicked. Rousseau knew this moment was seconds away from catastrophe. She made her move in silence. No signal, no command, just instinct. She turned off her flashlight. Darkness swallowed the room. Duval sucked in a breath, sharp startled. Then chaos erupted. A beam of light flashed to the far right as an officer aimed high, pulling Duval's gaze toward the distraction. Another beam flared behind him. Duval twisted instinctively, blade shifting. Rousseau surged forward, hands grabbing the edge of the crawl space, hoisting herself up in a fluid, desperate motion. Duval screamed, a raw, unhinged sound knife slicing through the air. She dodged by inches, her shoulders scraping the wooden frame. Elise shrank back, covering her head. Rousseau slammed her boot into Duval's hand. The knife clattered to the floor below. Duval roared, lunging. They collided in the cramped darkness, bodies slamming against beams, dust choking the air. He fought with wild, frantic strength, the strength of obsession fear and unraveling madness. Rousseau gritted her teeth, blocking, twisting, striking, trying to keep him away from Elise. Below them, officers shouted, lights flaring upward in frantic sweeps. Duval clawed at Rousseau's arm, trying to drag her off balance. She elbowed him hard, but he barely flinched. "She belongs with me," he snarled. "No," Rousseau gasped. "She belongs in her life. She is my life." He lunged again. Rousseau grabbed his vest, using his momentum to slam him into a support beam. He howled in pain. The crawl space groaned under their combined weight wood, splitting dust pouring down like decaying snow. "Take the shot," an officer yelled from below. "No shot," Rousseau barked, grappling with Duval. Too close. Duval twisted violently, knocking Rousseau back. She fell, catching herself on a beam. He scrambled toward Elise, reaching for her with trembling desperation. "Elise, come." Rousseau didn't think. She launched herself at him with everything she had. They collided again, rolling across the narrow space. His fist cracked against her jaw. Sparks exploded behind her eyes. She shoved him breath ragged. He slipped. For a split second, his eyes widened, not with fear, but with disbelief as the wood beneath him gave way. The floor cracked. Duval fell through. A scream tore from his throat as he plunged body crashing into the apartment floor below with a sickening thud. Silence. Then the groans of a man broken, but somehow still alive. Officers swarmed him, weapons-trained voices shouting commands he was too dazed to obey. They pinned him, cuffed him, dragged him away. Rousseau collapsed against the beam's chest, heaving sweat mixing with dust across her skin. "Elise," she whispered, turning toward the trembling figure curled in the corner. She reached out gently. "It's over," Rousseau said softly. Elise looked up, tears streaking her cheeks. "No," she whispered. "You don't understand." Rousseau frowned. "What?" Elise's voice trembled with terror. "I wasn't alone with Duval all these years." Rousseau's breath caught. He wasn't the only one visiting me. The crawl space seemed to shrink around them. A chill bled through the darkness. Elise's next words shattered the fragile air between them with brutal clarity. "There was another man, someone Duval listened to, someone he feared." Rousseau felt her heart drop. "Who?" she whispered. Elise swallowed hard. Her answer was soft and devastating. "The man in the other cell, Adrien." The words hit Rousseau like a physical blow, knocking the breath from her lungs, even though she stayed perfectly still. Dust drifted through the beam of her flashlight, suspended like falling ash, but the world beneath it shifted violently. Elise's trembling voice repeated itself, barely audible, but unmistakable. "The man in the other cell. Adrien." It felt impossible, irrational, and yet everything snapped into place with horrifying precision, the calmness, the riddles, the satisfaction in his voice. The knowledge he shouldn't have had. Duval's cryptic reverence, as if Adrien were more than a suspect, as if he were the architect. Rousseau swallowed hard, her throat dry as gravel. "Elise, listen to me. Adrien is in custody. He can't hurt you anymore." But Elise shook her head violently, eyes wide with a terror so raw it seemed carved into her bones. "You don't understand," she whispered. He wasn't locked away. Not really. He always knew what was happening. They brought him things. They spoke about me. I heard them. Through the walls. Through the vents. Rousseau froze. A chill stabbed up her spine. "Which vents?" she asked. "The ones in the basement," Elise rasped. "The ones Duval used. The ones he said Adrien used before him. They worked together. Adrien told him what to do. Told him how to hide me. Told him when to move me." Rousseau's blood ran cold. This wasn't two suspects stumbling into the same crime. This was a chain, a hierarchy. And Adrien was not at the bottom. Footsteps thundered behind her. Officers climbed into the crawl space, reaching for Elise. They wrapped her in a blanket, lifting her gently. Elise clung to Rousseau's arm with frantic urgency. "He'll know I'm gone," she whispered. "He always knows." Rousseau squeezed her hand. "He won't get near you, I swear it." Elise's eyes glistened with a terrible certainty. "You don't know him. None of you do." Rousseau looked at Elise's frail body, her hollow cheeks, her trembling limbs, the lingering remnants of 20 years stolen. She had survived the unimaginable. She had endured isolation, manipulation, and darkness that would have crushed anyone else. But beneath all that trauma was something else, something subtle but unmistakable. She was still afraid of Adrien, more afraid of him than of Duval. And that fear told Rousseau everything she needed to know. "Get Elise to the hospital," she ordered. "No one gets near her without clearance from me personally." The officers nodded. "And double her security," she added. "Armed guards at the door, 2 shifts, no exceptions." As Elise was carried out, her voice floated back weak and fractured. "Detective, don't talk to him alone." Rousseau's stomach twisted. She already knew she was going to. The station felt different when Rousseau returned. Not chaotic, worse. Controlled. Quieted. Like a storm sucking breath inward before unleashing itself. Officers whispered in tight clusters. Some refused to look at her. Others looked too long. The shock had spread like a virus, the idea that one of their own was a predator, and another housed safely behind bars might have been the true engine driving everything. She moved toward the detention wing with the steady, heavy steps of someone walking toward a reckoning. 2 officers guarded Adrian's cell. They stepped aside reluctantly, eyes shadowed with dread. Any movement, she asked. One officer shook his head. Not a word, not a sound. Rousseau drew a slow breath and approached. Adrian sat exactly as she had left him earlier, hands folded, posture upright, eyes fixed on nothing. He looked like a man waiting for an appointment he had scheduled months ago. The moment her shadow crossed the floor, he turned his head. Not fast, not startled, as if he had anticipated the precise second she would return. "Detective Rousseau," he said softly, "has the truth finished speaking yet?" Her jaw tightened. "You lied." Adrian lifted one eyebrow. "Did I? Or did you ask the wrong questions?" She stepped closer, gripping the bars. "Elise identified you." He tilted his head slightly, as she should. "You orchestrated this," Rousseau said, voice shaking with rage she fought to bury. "You manipulated Duval. You controlled him." Adrian's faint smile spread like a stain. "I guided him." "Why?" she demanded. "Why her? Why Elise?" Adrian leaned forward, eyes dark and alive with terrifying clarity. "Because she was the first to see me." Rousseau's breath stilled. She noticed things, he continued. Watched people, patterns, doorways, shadows. When she walked home at night, she didn't look at her feet. She looked at reflections in windows. She listened. She paid attention. She was aware. Rousseau felt nausea twist in her gut. "She was never just a victim," Adrian whispered. "She was an obsession." "You ruined her life," Rousseau snapped. "No," he said calmly. "I preserved her." The words felt like acid in the air. "And Duval?" Rousseau asked. "What did you do to him?" Adrian chuckled softly. Duval was a lonely man, weak, searching for purpose, searching for someone to follow. "I simply offered him truth." "You brainwashed him." Adrian shrugged. "He found meaning in what others fear." Rousseau felt her pulse pounding behind her eyes. "What did you tell him to do?" Adrian answered without hesitation. "To build a sanctuary." Rousseau's lungs constricted. That crawl space wasn't a sanctuary, it was a prison. "Sanctuaries often look like prisons," Adrian replied quietly, "until you accept them." "You're sick," she whispered. Adrian's smile sharpened. Sick people cannot see the pattern. Rousseau stepped back, trying to calm her racing thoughts. "Where is the rest of the evidence? Where are the other victims? How many more were there?" Adrian watched her with a serene, almost paternal regard. "As many as needed. No more, no less." Rousseau slammed her fist against the bars. "Tell me where Elise was kept." Adrian leaned back. "You already found one of her rooms. You said she wasn't meant to disappear." "She wasn't." His voice softened, almost tender. "She was meant to evolve." Rousseau's voice broke. "What did you do to her?" Adrian's eyes shone with a chilling pride. "I prepared her." "For what?" Rousseau shouted. Adrian looked up toward the ceiling, as though addressing someone unseen. "For the moment she would return." The air seemed to thicken. "She warned us about you," Rousseau said. Adrian smiled with genuine delight. "Of course she did. She learned well." Rousseau's skin crawled. "She said you visited her, even in Duval's custody." Adrian's smile widened. He always shared. Rousseau felt her stomach twist. "You're lying." "Am I?" he whispered. "Or are you afraid I'm not?" Her breath hitched. "Duval feared you," she murmured. "He said he acted because of you." Adrian nodded slowly. "Fear is a powerful motivator." "And Elise said you would know she escaped." Adrian's eyes gleamed. "I do." Rousseau went still. "Because she screamed the same way she did the night I first found her," Adrian murmured. "And I always hear her scream." Cold dread punched her throat. You didn't hear anything," she said shakily. "You've been in custody." Adrian leaned forward until his face pressed close to the bars. "Walls," he whispered, "remember voices." Rousseau stepped back instinctively. Adrian stared at her, then spoke in a voice so quiet it barely existed. "You should check the hospital." Rousseau froze. "What did you say?" she whispered. Adrian didn't blink. "You should check the hospital." Rousseau turned and bolted, heart-hammering adrenaline igniting her veins. She didn't hear Adrian's final words as the door slammed behind her, but the guard beside him did. "Don't let them be too late." Rousseau ran. She didn't remember leaving the detention wing. She didn't remember pushing through the double doors or the way the fluorescent lights streaked past in long, dizzying lines. All she remembered was the sound of Adrian's voice, soft, deliberate, heavy, with dreadful certainty echoing inside her skull. "You should check the hospital." Her feet pounded the hallway floor. Officers shouted after her, but their words dissolved into meaningless noise. every instinct screamed that she was already late. That time had been thinning like brittle cloth ever since Adrian opened his mouth. When she burst into the parking lot, the cold air slapped her across the face. She tasted metal on her tongue. Fear sharpened to a razor's edge. She fumbled with her keys, hands, trembling breath, clouding in violent bursts. The engine roared to life, and she sped through the city with sirens wailing, weaving through traffic like a force with no brakes. The hospital loomed ahead, white, sterile, indifferent, its windows glowing faintly against the night. Police cars lined the entrance. Officers were posted everywhere, but nothing felt safe. Nothing. She sprinted up the stairs 2 at a time, ignoring the elevator, ignoring the stairs, ignoring the nurse shouting after her. Elise's room was on the 4th floor. She reached the corridor, breathless chest burning, and froze. The hallway was empty. No officers, no guards, no sound. Just a long stretch of polished linoleum, glistening like a blade under the dim lights. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears, each second heavier than the last. "Where are the guards?" she whispered. A nurse appeared at the far end, frowning nervously. "Detective we didn't know you were coming." "Where are the guards?" Rousseau demanded, voice slicing through the quiet. The nurse's throat bobbed. "They were here an hour ago, but..." One of them said the other had been reassigned. New orders from the precinct. Rousseau's blood ran cold. No one reassigned anything. A faint trembling alarm bell rang in her mind. Elise. She lunged toward the room, threw the door open, and exhaled a breath that didn't reach her lungs. The bed was rumpled. The blanket, half on the floor. Electrodes dangled from the side panel. The IV line flopped loosely from its pole. Empty. Rousseau staggered backward, gripping the doorframe to steady herself. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and fear. A chair lay overturned. A plastic cup rolled slowly across the floor, circling like a clock running out of time. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Her radio crackled violently. "Detective Rousseau, we need you back at the station, Adrienne." Static swallowed the rest. She pressed the radio to her lips. "Say that again." "Adrian is gone." The world tilted sideways. "What do you mean he's gone?" He escaped. We don't understand how. Cameras caught nothing. Guards said he collapsed. They opened the door and he was... Rousseau felt the corridor spin. Adrian wasn't a prisoner. He had been waiting, planning. And Elise was gone again. She turned and bolted toward the stairwell, only to stop dead as a new sound drifted through the hallway. A voice. A small trembling voice she recognized instantly. "Elise," she whispered. The nurse froze, eyes darting. The voice came again, but not from the room. Not from the corridor. From the ventilation grate near the floor. Elise Rousseau repeated, kneeling down. "Elise, are you in there? Can you hear me?" But the voice was not calling her name. It wasn't calling anyone's name. It was whispering 2 words over and over, rapid, terrified, like a scratched recording stuck on a loop. "Don't follow." Rousseau's heart seized. "Elise, where are you?" "Don't follow. Don't follow." Rousseau pressed her ear to the grate. A metallic clang echoed through the vents far away, deep in the building. Another clang. Then a scraping sound like something being dragged. Then footsteps. Slow. Measured. Following the vent duct. She felt ice crawl down her spine. "Elise is on the move," she whispered. "No," the nurse said softly, trembling. Rousseau turned eyes wide. "What?" The nurse swallowed. I saw someone earlier, before you arrived. Someone in a maintenance uniform. He was on the 4th floor near Elise's room. He said he was fixing a ventilation alarm." Rousseau's pulse hammered. "Did you see his face?" The nurse nodded slowly, face draining of color. "He had a scar down his cheek." "Duval." "No." "Impossible." Duval was in custody, under guard, injured. Unless Duval hadn't acted alone. Unless the voice that had controlled him wasn't Adrian's. Unless there was a third man. Rousseau stood so fast, her vision blurred. "We need to shut down the hospital vents. Now!" Before she could move, the hallway lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then went out entirely. Darkness swallowed everything. The nurse screamed. Rousseau's hand flew to her holster. "Stay behind me." The emergency lights flickered back to life in dim red pulses, casting the corridor in a hellish glow. Shadows stretched across the walls like reaching fingers. A door creaked open at the far end of the hallway. Rousseau aimed her weapon. "Stop, police." A figure stepped out of the darkness. Tall, calm, eyes gleaming with something ancient and cold. Not Duval. Not Adrian. Someone else. Someone Elise had feared even more. He walked with slow, deliberate steps, as if he owned the silence around him, as if he recognized Rousseau, as if he had been waiting. His voice drifted across the corridor, low and smooth. "You're very persistent, detective." Rousseau's breath hitched. "Stop where you are. Hands up." He smiled faintly, the expression dead of warmth. "You're chasing the wrong ghosts." "Hands up," she shouted. But he didn't. "I came for Elise," he said softly, "as I always have." Rousseau's stomach clenched. "Where is she?" "Not where you'll find her," he replied. "Not unless she wants to be found." "Who are you?" Rousseau demanded. "What's your connection to Adrienne, to Duval?" He tilted his head eyes, dark as stone. They were disciples. The word struck like a blade. Disciples of what she asked. His smile sharpened into something predatory. "Of me." Rousseau felt her skin crawl. "What do you want with Elise?" she asked, voice cracking despite her effort to steady it. His gaze lingered on her for a heartbeat too long. "She sees things," he whispered. "She always has. And she saw me first." Then, without warning, he ran, not away, toward the vents. He tore the grate free with inhuman speed, metal shrieking as it hit the floor. He vanished into the duct, like a shadow swallowed by deeper darkness. Rousseau sprinted forward, sealed the floor, shut the vents. Now, officers exploded into motion alarms, blaring through the hospital, but the figure was gone, moving through the veins of the building, impossible to catch. "Detective," someone yelled from behind her. "We found a message in Elise's room." Rousseau spun around. "What message?" They handed her a piece of torn paper, trembling. A message scrawled in hurried, frantic handwriting letters, jagged and uneven. He was never the monster. He was only the beginning. Rousseau's blood turned to ice. The officer swallowed hard. "Detective, what does that mean?" Rousseau stared at the vent where the stranger vanished. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "It means Adrienne didn't create this." She took a trembling breath. He answered to someone else. Another breath. And now that someone has Elise. The hospital alarms wailed around them. Red lights pulsed. Shadows shifted. And Detective Rousseau realized with horrifying clarity, the cold case wasn't solved. The cold case wasn't even understood. It had only just woken up. The alarms screamed through the hospital like a living thing, shuddering, metallic, desperate. Red lights pulsed against the walls, flooding the corridor with the rhythm of a heartbeat, spiraling out of control. Officers rushed in all directions, shouting commands, drowned beneath the wail of the sirens, but Rousseau heard none of it. Her world had narrowed to a single point. The vent where he disappeared. The man with the voice that seemed older than his face. The man Elise feared more than the others. The man who moved with purpose, not chaos, not panic, but certainty. The man who called the others disciples. Her pulse hammered. There was no blueprint for this moment. No training for uncovering a predator who hid beneath the skin of the city for decades, weaving shadows into a doctrine. But Rousseau kept moving her feet, pulling her forward with a ferocity she didn't recognize. "We need the duct schematics," she shouted. "On the way. Seal every exit. Already doing it." But she knew deeply instinctively that it wouldn't be enough. He didn't run like prey. He didn't run like a fugitive. He ran like someone returning home. The hospital vents twisted through the building like arteries connecting supply closets, maintenance rooms, basements, abandoned hallways. And if Duval and Adrienne had used these ducts to move Elise to visit her, to whisper their madness through metal walls, then the stranger knew every inch of this hidden world. Every path, every blind spot, every shadow. Rousseau sprinted toward the service stairwell. Officers followed footsteps pounding behind her as they descended into the basement. The air grew colder. The lights flickered. Pipes rattled overhead like bones shaking in the dark. She reached the boiler room. A vent grate lay torn open screws scattered like teeth across the concrete floor. "He went this way," an officer murmured. Rousseau crouched, shining her flashlight into the duct. A faint smear of dust. A partial footprint. Human. Fresh. And beside it, a single long strand of hair. Dark. Elise's. Rousseau's jaw tightened. "We follow." But even as the officers prepared to remove the grate, another sound echoed through the basement. Distant at first, then rising, trembling, filling the air like a broken melody. A scream. Not a long one. Not a violent one. A startled, breathless, pleading cry. "Please, no, don't." "Elise." Rousseau's heart lurched. "Move." They sprinted through the basement corridor, following the sound. Water dripped from overhead pipes, splattering like footsteps behind them. The hallway twisted left, then right. Then opened into a dead-end storage chamber filled with old equipment. Silence. Rousseau raised her weapon, scanning the room. Her flashlight flicked across walls, crates, rusted tanks, nothing. Then she saw it. A second vent grate half unscrewed. Something glinted inside. A silver chain. A necklace. Elise's. Rousseau reached for it, but a sudden metallic clang hammered the far side of the wall. She spun around, raising her weapon, adrenaline spiking so hard it blurred her vision. A panel slid open. A hidden door, not part of hospital design. A forgotten maintenance hatch. Darkness spilled out like smoke. A hand reached through, gripping the frame. Then he stepped out. The stranger, the architect of everything. For the first time, Rousseau saw him clearly. His face was unsettlingly ordinary mid-50s, lean, wearing a maintenance uniform devoid of any insignia. But his eyes? His eyes were wrong. Empty but aware. Dead but deliberate. "Detective," he said calmly, "don't interfere." Rousseau aimed. "Where is Elise?" "She wants to leave," he said, brushing dust off his sleeve, "but she cannot." "You took her," Rousseau spat. "You hid her. You manipulated Adrian and Duval." "They chose me," he interrupted. "I never forced them. Weak men seek structure. Lost men seek purpose." "You trained them," Rousseau said, her voice tightening with fury. "You turned them into monsters." "No," he whispered. "I stripped away what kept them blind." He stepped closer. Rousseau raised her weapon higher. "Stop. Right there." But he didn't. He walked with the serene confidence of someone convinced he could not be harmed. "You look at Elise and see a victim," he murmured. "I looked at Elise and saw potential." Rousseau's stomach twisted. For what? For understanding, he breathed. For seeing the world as it truly is. "She was a young woman living her life," Rousseau snapped. "You destroyed her." "No," he said softly. "I awakened her." Rousseau felt rage ignite behind her ribs. "Where is she?" He tilted his head. Then he stepped aside, revealing a silhouette behind him. Small, fragile, shaking. Elise. Her face was pale hollow, but her eyes locked onto Rousseau's with a desperation that bordered on hysteria. "Detective," she gasped, "he's not alone." Before she could finish, the man grabbed her wrist with chilling speed, pulling her back into the darkness. "Stop," Rousseau yelled, lunging. The hatch slammed shut. Metal screeched. Locks snapped into place behind the wall. Rousseau reached it, pounding her fist against the steel. Elise. Muffled cries echoed from behind the barrier. Then silence. Officers surrounded her, panicked. "Detective, there's another entrance to the duct's east side. We're tracing him now." But Rousseau wasn't listening. She pressed her forehead against the cold metal breath, trembling. "He's moving her," she whispered. "He's relocating her." Where an officer asked, she shut her eyes. Adrian's words echoed through her skull like a curse carved into bone. She wasn't meant to disappear. She was meant to evolve. Rousseau stood abruptly. "No more hospitals, no more vents. He's taking her somewhere else." "Where?" Rousseau inhaled sharply. "The forest." The officer blinked. "But we searched." "No," she cut in. "We searched the ground, not the structures, not the old buildings, not the abandoned facilities." He said above. Adrian said the ground lies. Duval said Elisa sees things like she sensed where he'd be. She gripped her weapon. "We go back." Fog clung to the forest like an old sorrow as Rousseau and a team of armed officers entered the clearing where the first bodies were found. The air smelled of wet leaves and secrets long steeped in soil. The trees towered overhead like guards watching a ritual unfold. "Thermal drones ready at tech," announced. No movement yet. Rousseau scanned the area, her breath slow and controlled. Something was here, something they had missed. A crunch of leaves echoed behind her. She spun. Elise stumbled into the clearing. Hair-tangled face, streaked with tears, gown-torn wrists bleeding from where she'd struggled. She collapsed to her knees, gasping. "Elise!" Rousseau rushed to her. But Elise grabbed her arm with sudden, violent strength. No, get back. "Elise, you're safe." "He's not behind me," she choked. "He's—" A voice drifted from the treetops. "Calm?" "Soft. Waiting." "Detective?" They looked up. He stood above them. On the rusted balcony of an abandoned ranger tower, partially hidden behind overgrowth. A place no one had thought to search. A place the forest itself had swallowed. He watched them with eerie stillness. "You came faster than I expected." Rousseau raised her weapon. "It's over." He smiled faintly. "No, you still don't see it." "See what?" He spread his arms slightly. "Elise didn't survive because of me. She survived because she is like me." Elise shook her head violently. "He's lying. Don't listen." Rousseau stepped forward, weapon steady. "Let her go." He tilted his head. "I did." A chill rippled through Rousseau. "What do you mean?" Elise walked here on her own, he whispered. She followed me. Rousseau looked at Elise, her trembling, her panic, her tears, but beneath them, something else. A flicker. No, a recognition. Elise, Rousseau whispered, is he telling the truth? Elise's breath hitched. Her pupils dilated. Her voice cracked. He's lying. He's trying to... The man's voice cut through her words. Ask her what she told me in the dark. Elise froze. Rousseau's heart stalled. Ask, he repeated softly, who opened the vent for her the first time she tried to escape. Elise's face drained of color. Rousseau whispered Elise. Elise didn't answer. Her fingers tightened around Rousseau's sleeve. Too tight, too deliberate, too practiced. Rousseau's blood ran cold. Elise, she repeated more firmly, did you open it? Or did he? Elise's eyes filled with tears. Not of fear, of rage. Something inside her trembled too sharp, too controlled. And then the forest air shifted. A single truth fell into place. Elise wasn't running from him. She was running toward something else. Toward the final reckoning. Elise whispered, voice breaking. I didn't want them to hurt me. Rousseau swallowed. They did hurt you. Elise shook her head slowly. No, she breathed. Not at first. Her eyes lifted, meeting Rousseau's with haunting clarity. I followed him. Rousseau stepped back. Elise. The stranger watched in silence. Calm? Knowing. He showed me things, Elise whispered. Things Adrian never understood. Things Duval worshipped. Her hands trembled. I wasn't his prisoner, she said softly. I was his student. Rousseau stared at her heartbeat, collapsing into silence. Elise, what did you do? Elise exhaled, trembling. I led Duval to the others. I left signs for Adrian. I called them to me. No, Rousseau whispered. No, he said I was chosen. Elise murmured, and I believed him. A breath, a tear, a whisper edged with horror. I still do. And in that moment, as the forest exhaled, as the stranger smiled faintly, as Elise released Rousseau's sleeve, every theory shattered, every assumption fractured, every truth twisted. The cold case had never been about finding Elise. It had been about unleashing her. Elise rose slowly to her feet. The stranger stepped down from the tower, walking toward her, toward Rousseau, toward the truth. Detective Rousseau lifted her weapon, but the forest felt suddenly too large, the night too silent, the story too unfinished. Elise whispered, You were never chasing a monster detective. She turned her head. Her eyes gleamed. You were chasing a mirror. The flashlight flickered. The forest darkened, and the cold case that shook Bordeaux did not end. It only opened.